All right. Wonderful. Well, so for tonight, I think kind of same setup as usual. If you got a stack of blankets or towels that we'll use, and then our pillows for a bolster. Um, and this week, the last several weeks, I feel like I've been trying to teach something new, and it just like always turns out to be like the same lesson in a different, different disguise. So this week we're kind of working with a quote that I picked up from the internet. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Young Pueblo. He is a poet who has been very uh, often shared on social media, and he posted this like just a week or so ago as I was planning classes for this week, and I immediately translated everything that was in this little blurb into yogic language. It just seemed to make sense to me. So I thought what we'd work with this week was integrating the shadow self. This is something that Carl Jung dealt with a lot. That was a big part of his work and dream work, and as far as getting into that shadow self. And the shadow self he describes primarily as that which is sort of unacknowledged within us, or in some cases repressed within us. So like an example, if we as children get angry at somebody, and maybe we slap our sister or our classmate or something like that, and then we get admonished for that, then we maybe are less likely to show our anger. And so maybe some of that angry piece of us gets buried inside of ourselves, or unacknowledged, or repressed, or kind of stuffed down. And the idea is not to eradicate the shadow self. The idea is to integrate the shadow so that we experience wholeness. And so one way that we might do that is if we have our repressed anger, or we have sort of sublimated our anger, we might not then be able to harness the positive attributes of anger, which allow us to A, stand up for ourselves, B, utilize the transformative power that anger carries in it, and to make things different. So the goal, Carl Jung says, is not to be perfect, which I think is impossible. I think we've all kind of accepted that perfection is not happening, as much as us type A's don't like to hear that. The goal instead is to become whole, to become the full spectrum of our being. And we do this by, again, kind of shining a light on that which is within us that is unseen, unacknowledged, or actively repressed, and to harness the positive attributes of those shadow qualities in order to find wholeness. So the quote that I promised from Young Pueblo is, "To see your hidden patterns, you need to intentionally build self-awareness. Question your perception. Build a compassionate and honest internal dialogue. Dig deeper into what your real motivations are, and have the humility to know that you can learn more. Self-awareness combined with action opens the door to real change." So when he spoke about hidden patterns, I immediately thought samskaras, which are the patterns that we are most of the time subliminal or sort of automated within our lives, and that are neither good nor bad, but just patterns. But when we shine a light on those patterns, we can then cultivate positive samskaras. And then when he said you need to intentionally build self-awareness, my mind, of course, immediately went to svadhyaya, that self-awareness practice that is part of yoga. And then I also thought to myself that a lot of these shadow sides and a lot of this shadow work that we do as individuals is also scales up. So dealing with the shadow within ourselves and bringing the light of self-awareness into those unacknowledged parts of us is also something that we need to do as a whole culture, as a whole planet, as the everything that is to start to work with what has been unacknowledged within us as a whole, and how to work with those things by shining a light on it, and then to bring that intention into action by creating positive samskaras and new ways of being, and integrating some of the power of that shadow side into our wholeness. So the way I thought we'd practice today is first just beginning seated, just taking a little moment here to scan through each chakra. So as we're seated and kind of rooted and grounded, of course, feeling free to use any of those pillows or blankets to support the hips. And then through that groundedness, through that sort of magnetism of the earth kind of pulling us downward, starting to feel that lift and open through the rest of our body, kind of lifting up into space, opening the heart, elevating the mind. And then beginning at that root center, just taking a few moments at each energetic center to draw our awareness there. So we'll begin at that root center, and this of course deals with our financial security, our food, our sleep, our shelter, the things that we need to maintain our aliveness in this body. And to just acknowledge what parts of our life around that, or around our survival, are we doing consciously and with intention, and what parts are maybe just more subliminal or automatic. So just maybe even bringing a hand to sort of each of these energetic centers and just resting there, kind of examining, scanning. And then drawing awareness into the low belly, just below the navel. This is the place of transformation, creativity, change, our gut feeling, sort of an intuitive quality of this part of us. In what ways have those qualities been, what are we aware of, and what has been unacknowledged? What is part of that unseen part of us? And then drawing awareness to that power center just below the sternum, the solar plexus, and just maybe even giving a little gentle pressure in that area and just noticing, does it feel kind of hardened as if we're protecting something or fearful? Does it feel kind of too soft and too vulnerable? Or is there a little bit of sort of happy medium there where we have strength and confidence but are not closed off in that center? And what parts of the way that power flows in us or through us or from us feels really intentional, and where are we bringing awareness to that, and where has there been places with power in our lives that is a little bit less intentional and maybe unacknowledged. Then drawing awareness into the heart center, this place where we feel, this place where we give love, where we receive love, where we allow love to flow through us, this place where we are connected to other living things. And what feelings are we aware of and acknowledge? What feelings have we maybe dismissed or not acknowledged? What ways that we've given or received love are aware? How are we bringing awareness to that? And what parts have been unacknowledged? And drawing awareness to the throat center and just acknowledging our own voice, the way that we express who we are, the way we express our identity, whether we speak truth, whether our words are kind and loving, and what parts of our voice have maybe gone unheard. When have we spoken too loudly? When have we been too quiet? Just acknowledging and sort of shining a light on our communication, our expression of self. Drawing awareness into that third eye center, we acknowledge our wisdom, our creativity in the way of imagining or envisioning the world, whether it's a past world, a present world, or a future world, and using our vivid imagination to engage in that quality of foresight and intuition. Do we feel connected to our intuition? Have we silenced it? Have we lost our connection to it? So just scanning and finding awareness there. And then finally drawing awareness to the crown center at the top of the head, this place that we are connected to the sacred or to the divine. This place where we are connected to all life, connected to our breath, connected to our aliveness. Do we feel connected? Have we sort of lost our awareness of that connection? Just kind of noticing where we are in this moment. Where could we shine a light? And then releasing your hands and just taking 3 breaths, drawing a breath in through the crown of the head and elongating the breath so it comes all the way down to the root as we inhale. And then lifting up and out through the crown as we exhale. So just 3 breaths like that. And then we'll begin to find our very first shape. So maybe gathering one blanket that we can roll. We're going to take a forward fold. So one blanket rolled to place under the knees. And then bolster or your pillows can come to rest on the thighs. And we can kind of test out whether or not this is going to be the right support. We might also choose to bring an extra blanket to the far edge of our pillow supports to support the head so that we have a little bit more space to breathe. And as we find our way into this fold, kind of supporting what feels good in your body, maybe you like the belly supported, maybe it's more ribs, maybe it's a little further away than that. So just kind of playing with the position of your props to find the right support. And once you feel supported, kind of softening the body, kind of shaking everything out into this fold. Letting the hands rest, either palms up for that sense of curiosity and openness, or maybe palms down to ground ourselves as we do this inner looking. And while we're here, maybe scanning those parts, those chakra centers again, as we look deeper within, kind of taking that time to discover the undiscovered, to sit with and acknowledge the places that we don't always tread. Notice as you lean deeper in how broad the back body becomes, and using your breath to exaggerate that feeling a little bit. See if you can keep that breath pattern going of breathing in through the crown all the way down to that root center. And breathing out back from the root upward. As we consider this inward glance, we bring intention to our self-awareness, being really honest and also compassionate with ourselves. The idea of working with the shadow is often intimidating. I mean, it's in the dark for a reason usually. There's things about ourselves that we don't always want to work with or acknowledge, but bringing compassion to this honest assessment. To do that work of digging a little deeper into our motivations. And also this forward fold can bring about that humility that we talked about. Remaining close to the ground, leaning into the support we've set up for ourselves. It's important when we go to do our shadow work that we do set up ourselves with some kind of support. Longer resting time, small comforts, space. Maybe we continue with that breath into the crown and down into the root and then back up and out. Or maybe we take a few rounds of breath at each of those energy centers again and just acknowledge with this inward glance what we feel, see, hear, or think in those spaces. maybe about 10 to 12 more rounds of breath here. With each inhale, bringing a little bit more space to explore, kind of opening up the doors and little drawers and things inside of ourselves, and using each exhale to surrender to the acceptance of what we find with no judgment, simply bringing compassion and awareness. Feel how the further we lean into this inquiry, the broader and more open our whole back body becomes. Last few rounds of breath here. And letting the back of the heart lift and pull you up. We're going to lean back into the hands for a moment, keeping the chin down towards the chest and just kind of rocking the head from side to side, ear to shoulder, back to center, other side, ear to shoulder, back to center. And finally coming to a place where we can move some of our props. So the pillows or your bolster is going to come right behind you, long edges of the pillows or bolster against your sacrum. And then we're going to turn to one side. You can start with either side. We've kind of done this flow before, so this will probably seem familiar to you. We're going to take some pillows or blankets just a little ways away from our first set of support here, so there's a little channel or space. And before we find our way into our side lying lean, we might also use that little roll that we had between the knees. And we can have kind of a deer shape in the legs here, or the knees can be a little bit more stacked. It just depends on what's comfortable for your body. We're eventually going to come to a side lying shape. But before we do that, we're going to take our hand that's furthest from our supports and kind of lean into it and kind of reach this side of the body open, just for a few rounds of breath. And then, so we're kind of opening this space and then kind of bringing that area down so that the arm and shoulder kind of falls into the space between our two sets of support. And just letting the head rest on this other support. And again, we might adjust the knees into a different position. Top arm can rest along the top side of the body. It can come to the support in front of you, or we can reach it up and overhead and then just kind of relax and bend at the elbow, letting the arm just rest. So this is sort of about, again, setting ourselves up with support, both physically here in the moment and also metaphorically as we do this work. And as we lean in, as we kind of shift ourselves away from center and kind of lean to one side, we kind of begin to explore those outer edges or those kind of hidden places. And the further we lean into that, the more open that top side of the body can become. So we feel this sense of leaning into the support, leaning into the harder work in order to find that broadening or that opening. Maybe here for the next several rounds of breath, we scan each of those energy centers again. And as we connect to the root, the solar plexus, and all the way up, finding both how this feels as an individual person, and what ways that some of those energy centers might have some of those little hidden or dark corners, what parts of our shadow live in those energy centers, and how we relate to those energies. And then also considering how it is as a whole culture, or as a whole, as wholeness of living things. What parts feel in balance? What parts feel out of balance? Where is there compression? Where is there opening? Both, again, as an individual and on that broader scale. Utilize that tool of your breath to both exaggerate sort of the opening and closing and the leaning, but also to accentuate our aliveness, reminding ourselves that we're not after perfection as we lean into these scarier, darker shadow sides of ourselves. But how, as we acknowledge those things, as we shine a light, we become more illuminated. We are beings of light and love. We are composed of light and love. And as we harness whatever shadowy qualities we might be storing inside of ourselves as individuals and as a whole family, we find our way. We become brighter. And as each of us does this work, we open the door for inviting others to do the same. The idea is to integrate our wholeness. About 10 or 12 more breaths here. Just notice where your attention goes. Note what you discover. About 5 more breaths here. And wherever your top arm has landed, we're going to start to bring it to the space in front of us so we can just gently press up back to that seated shape. Just for a moment, we're going to lean back into that hand and just kind of stretch open that previously compressed part of the body. And as we release that, we're going to turn away from our supports. It sounds like a really bad idea to do in life, but just for the moment, so we can set ourselves up to fall even deeper into those supports. So the sacrum's coming up against our long edges of our bolster or pillow, and relaxing back. Now both shoulders are kind of falling into that channel. So we might need to adjust the shape of our supports to find that. And ideally, both shoulders are kind of over the top of whatever our support is underneath the spine. And arms can be kind of out wide, the elbows can be straight or bent. And then once you've kind of got the upper body situated, the head is properly supported where you feel like you can really let go and rest with the heart open and the shoulders relaxed back, we can make a choice about what we want to do with our feet. So the feet might stay planted on the floor and knees come together. Feet might come together and knees come wide with some support. We might extend the legs long. So just kind of choosing what fits your body best and what is going to help you find the most ease. And just taking those first few rounds of breath to kind of settle in, kind of shaking out any tension. And just beginning to feel how open the front body is here. Notice the root center still close to the floor. The belly even more broad. That power center at that, ideally we've kind of created that ideal medium there where it's not too tight from fear or defensiveness and not too soft that leaves us vulnerable, but kind of has that natural tension there, just enough to be confident. Heart so broad and so open that we can examine it more fully. Feeling now not just that inward awareness, but also as we express through the throat center what's on our heart, that we feel authentic. That our inner life and our outer life are coming closer and closer to congruency, wholeness. Letting the mind feel supported as the back of the head is supported so that we can remain grounded in our clarity, that we can shine that light of intuition and awareness. And maybe breathing in through that crown of the head, allowing that life force to flood us. Imagine breathing in that strong light, compassion, and a deep sense of authentic self-awareness. This pose for some people feels that very vulnerable. For some people it feels very exuberant. Just kind of noticing how you feel in this shape, what it can teach you. Noting that we carefully set up supports underneath our body to find this openness. And again, as we deal with our shadow self, as we begin to work in those unacknowledged places within us, we have to have the right amount of support set up. And again, as we deal with these things on a grander, more societal scale or cultural scale, setting ourselves up with the appropriate amount of support so that we can let go to it, so we can trust in it. About 7 to 10 more breaths in this shape. See if you can relish in that openness. Sometimes the things within us that have been suppressed or left unacknowledged are not our fault. But sometimes it is. But even if it's not our fault that those things have been suppressed within us, it's absolutely our responsibility to begin to work with that energy. To allow our energy centers to be clear and flowing. And again, not perfection, but that wholeness. Being able to integrate those parts for the good of all. For ourselves, for all others. Last breath or two here in this open heart shape. Those then we can either find our way up and out of this shape again, or we can simply roll to the side that we weren't facing before into that side lying shape. And maybe setting up the knees or adjusting our supports for the legs here to find, again, that same kind of side lying shape. You might have to adjust where the head support is and how the mid support is kind of supporting underneath that lower side of the body. And again, top arm can be alongside the top of the body, placed in front of us, or reaching up and over, and then relaxing that arm. So again, this side lying shape is sort of about coming out of our center, out of our comfort zone, and kind of leaning into those places that we don't always tread. And bringing our compassion and our honesty and our humility with us as we examine and begin to get to know these parts of ourselves that have often been hidden. Carl Jung also said of this shadow work that good does not become better by being exaggerated. We all have our good qualities. Many of us have more good qualities than bad qualities, but we don't integrate into wholeness by simply exaggerating or expanding the good qualities, which we might feel on that top side of the body, that more open side of the body. Where the real work is pushing ourselves or letting ourselves really fall into that more compressed side, into that more unexplored side, those little dark corners. It says, good does not become better by being exaggerated, but worse, a small evil becomes a big one through being disregarded or repressed. Another example that another student had given me this week was that when she was a child, she was basically just kind of told that she couldn't sing, she couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, and this kind of thing. And maybe she's not a good singer. I don't know. I've never heard her really sing, but recently she's taken up the practice of chanting as part of her meditation and yoga practice, which of course doesn't require you to have a beautiful operatic voice or to have any talent of any kind, but she has been able to reclaim this sort of repressed or hidden part of herself, and to be able to use the qualities of that hidden part to bring about some kind of real positive change. And it's helped her to integrate into a more whole person by not ignoring or continuing to repress that small side of our body and not putting all of our attention on that broadened side of the body, but really finding wholeness between the two. And that requires us to sort of lean out of our comfort zone. Maybe we're revisiting each of those energy centers. Maybe we're shining the light that is being let in on that top side of our ribs as the light kind of shines through those places in the ribs and into that more compressed and smaller side of ourself. In what ways can you find something within you that has been quieted and give it a voice? Find something that's been hidden and resurface it. Find something that you feel that is negative or a negative quality about yourself that you can transmute through the power of attention and intention. As young Pueblo said in his quote, that when we bring that self-awareness and combine it with action, which of course made me think kriya, it's the more yogic word for that. When we bring that svadhyaya and combine it with kriya, it opens the door to real change. It creates that pratipaksha bhavanam. It creates that turning of the way we see it, the way we relate to it. It helps us integrate from little broken off pieces of ourselves into a whole self, acknowledging all of our parts, and striving not for perfection, but more of that integration, that wholeness, and being able to accept every part of ourselves with love, with compassion, with honesty, with humility. Last few breaths on this side. And as you feel ready to come out of the shape, just use your top arm to press yourself back up to seated. Another little rearrangement of our props. Our last two shapes are just going to be supine twists. So there's a couple ways we could do this. We could take a deer twist if you like, using your pillows. You could also just come to the back, flat on the ground, and maybe use a pillow between the knees or underneath the bottom of your knees, whatever way that you need to feel supported. If you don't want to use any props, you also don't have to. But once we're in our kind of seated shape, as we come down to the back, just give a little pressure on that solar plexus area just below the sternum, and just kind of feel that part of you activating as you come down. Kind of feel that balance of tension and strength in that part of you. So if you want to take a deer twist, you can. If you're on your back and taking a supine twist, feel free to take any variety. So you can scoot your hips to one side, you can cross one leg over the other, you can just simply allow both knees to fall. You can use support under or between the knees. And whatever position you take, if you're on your back, make sure both of your shoulders are relaxed into the floor. So you might need to adjust the way your arms are to feel that support, where you can relax the responsibility of your shoulders into that floor, feeling grounded in your responsibility. If you're on your deer twist type of shape, allowing both shoulders to roll forward as we find that shape this way. So again, the shoulders are relaxed and towards the floor. And in this twist, we're not going to stay quite as long as we've stayed in some of our previous poses, but feeling the belly area just below that solar plexus, kind of feeling that area and how that place is kind of twisted. And acknowledging the sometimes uncomfortable effect of transition. And that in-between place where we've acknowledged something but haven't quite yet made the transition. Just kind of allowing that part of you, that low belly, to soften, to let go of tension. And to see if we can engage with or shine a light of awareness and attention and intention to that discernment that's happening in our intestines. That's the discernment that decides what is useful to the body and integrates it, sends it to build cells, sends whatever's useful to nourish, sends whatever is useful to strengthen, and distributes it throughout the body. If it is not useful to the body, one way to deal with it is to eliminate it. But if we're trying to work toward wholeness, our transformation here that we're working with in the low belly is not about eliminating, but about accepting and transforming. Building something different out of the raw materials that we have, and working into that shadow self and changing it, not by eliminating it out of us and rejecting it and further keeping it in the dark or repression, but to acknowledge it and find some way to utilize those raw building materials to make something more beautiful. Feel into that solar plexus area in the body. Feel your own power. Feel the power that you've been given. Feel the times in your life where you felt that power has been taken from you. And just kind of feel that out in you. Is there any part of that that needs to be more deeply examined? The way we use our power, the way we allow our power to be taken, or whatever it is, do we feel balanced there? Just kind of acknowledging and shining a light on that part of us. Those two parts of us are at most, I think it's easy to be aware of those parts of us in a twist. But then also acknowledging that really broad open heart, whether you're facing towards the ground in deer or you're on your back and your heart is just open. Maybe you can even adjust your shoulders in such a way that allows the heart to feel a little bit more open. And within your twist, however you've chosen to take it. If you can, maybe gently turn your head from side to side a few times, nice and slow. Just kind of get an idea of the lay of the land, of what is available within your perspective, and then maybe find a place to stay and examine for a little while. You're just going to take about 3 or 4 more breaths on your twist in this side. If you were in deer, pressing yourself back up. If you're on your spine, just bringing knees back to center and taking a few rounds of breath just to kind of neutralize. Knees might come side to side or in towards the chest. Maybe the soles of the feet come to the floor and knees just fall side to side. But find your neutral. Let your spine feel relaxed into the floor. Take a breath or two. Neutral, kind of in the center, stable. And then we'll invite ourselves into that same change on the other side. So again, if you're supine, finding the supine twist that is most supportive or that serves you best for this evening. And just letting yourself settle in, adjusting props and support however you need to. How can you support yourself through this change? And again, drawing attention and awareness into that low belly and seeing if you can engage with that discernment. And again, as we change, as we engage in that discernment, sometimes we find that what's useful is to eliminate something. And we want to see if just for tonight, just for this particular lesson, if we can work on transforming those raw materials within us from our food, from our nourishment, into something different. How can we take those quiet, unintegrated parts of ourselves and shine a light on them and use those raw materials of whatever it might be, whether it's our anger, our sadness, our voice, whatever it is that we have not given a place in our life or a place in our individuality, and bringing that into and accepting that as a part of who we are and learning how to utilize that. And again, checking in with that power center just below the sternum. And just considering what power and empowerment, maybe it's how we empower others or not done. Maybe it's how we empower ourselves or not done. Maybe it's how we've given our power away or not done. Just noticing where that shows up for you. Just let yourself breathe through that. Feeling your heart center open. Acknowledging that openness. Again, maybe the head turns side to side, or if you're in a deer twist, maybe turning to the opposite side for a moment. In what ways could you use your breath here to feel out the whole of your being? Can you take breaths in that seem to inflate or broaden the body? Making space for all the parts of you to be seen and heard and felt and acknowledged and empowered and transformed. And using your breath out to release your resistance to whatever is that shadow side of yourself. As you let your breath out, sort of let go of your resistance, begin to integrate those parts of you into your wholeness. I have always loved the way that wholeness and holy and the word like whole, like a missing piece, all kind of interrelate to each other. There's so many ways to just kind of sit with those words. But those empty parts of ourselves aren't really places where things are missing. Those are maybe holes in our awareness or missing pieces of our integration. And how holy and sacred this work is of acknowledging all the parts of ourselves. This is like a way of redemption. To find those unsung voices and those unacknowledged parts of who we are. And beginning to give them voice. You know, I always think of this shadow work as kind of going into that dark cave, and, you know, very likely we're going to meet a few dragons while we're in there. And while we're there, you know, if we stumble into the dragon or kind of poke the dragon, we're afraid of the fire that would be breathed. And so we try not to go into those places and disturb the dragon. But consider for a moment how that dragon's fire could bring light to something, how it could ignite and inspirit you in some way. How maybe if we learn to work with that dragon, it might be a powerful ally and a powerful collaborator into bringing our awareness and our wholeness into integration, that we can acknowledge and be at peace with all of who we are and not just the parts we're comfortable with. So as you acknowledge this sort of change or this transition, take a few more rounds of breath here. And then as you feel ready to come out of your shape, taking your time to come back to center, to press yourself up if you're in deer, to neutralize in some way. Maybe you're seated, maybe you're on your back, whatever it is. Just kind of find some movement and just kind of shake out any tension in the body. And we'll move from this place into whatever you'd like for your final resting pose to be. I feel like it's important right now to feel grounded. So that might look like finding a resting pose where your feet are either soles of the feet on the floor and knees together. That might also look like pressing your feet into a wall if you're lying flat on your back. It might also look like giving your feet a break. Maybe you've stood your ground for a really long time and what you need is to let go. And if that's the case, maybe using some of those pillows or blankets to elevate the feet. Use any of the supports that are available to you to let yourself really rest and find stillness. For our resting pose, we're going to find ourselves kind of going a little deeper into the self as we release any movement in the body, as we release any poses that might cause tension or require us to let go to it. We're going to try to just fully release all effort in this resting shape. So many of the world's cultures and wisdoms give us maxims or axioms to know ourselves. Note seotan in Greek, noce te ipsum in Latin, tat tvam asi in Sanskrit. These all mean to know the self. And just like sort of when we're out in the world, you know, there's certain people that we sort of naturally gravitate to, and these are our people. We've kind of found our tribe, right? Like we know that these folks have our back, that we have their back, and it's comfortable and easy to be around these people. But there are other people that is difficult for us to work with. There's other people in the world who maybe challenge our values, or we challenge theirs. and finding a way to be so at home in yourself, so relaxed in who you are, so confident in your being that when whatever mirror out there in the world that we run into, that we can look at it and have compassion, that we can look at it and remain true to who we are. That is the goal of that integration, of that wholeness, of being able to acknowledge every kind of mirror and still see ourselves clearly. So see if you can just let go fully to the moment. Just acknowledging whatever state you are in, whether you're tired, whether you're inspired, whether your body feels tense or it feels relaxed. Begin with your breath and just allow that breath to bring you into that place of wholeness. We often have this idea that there's me and then there's everything else. There's me and there's the world. And this body, this skin and muscles and bones are sort of what separates what's me from what's everything else. And when we find a deep sense of stillness, and we allow the breath to flow in and the breath to flow out with an effortless kind of openness, we begin to feel that individuated body as almost an illusion. There's sort of a temporary structure, and that there really is no separation between what's out there and what's inside. This body is just simply a way of understanding it. It's a point of reference. So see if you can just kind of melt into the floor. See if you can allow your breath to bring you into the space around you in whatever room you're in. Just relish and sit in the peace of stillness, oneness, wholeness.
tat savitur varenyam Bargo devasya Dio yona prachodaya.
See if you can just feel the breath moving through the whole body. See if you can feel the breath as all the space around you flowing in. And as you exhale, feeling the floor and your body just kind of as one stillness. Maybe shifting your awareness to the crown of the head to see if you can feel that breath flowing in through that crown center, that aliveness, that divine aliveness. And if you can imagine each fiber of your nervous system, each tiny little thread of awareness and all the messages and information that's being passed through almost every square inch of your body. That aliveness, that awareness as one thing. Beginning to deepen that breath. Drawing aliveness in and feeling the awareness. Starting to feel where for the tip of the nose, the tip of the toes, the tip of the fingers, where each bone is resting in the floor. And beginning to find those soft and gentle movements to allow you to gently awaken the body. Feel the play between the space of your body and the space of the floor, the space of your body, the space of the air around you. Start to come back into that distinct identity as an individual. Maybe you can even maintain some of that connection to everything that is. And taking your time, just gently finding that movement until you feel ready to maybe take a long stretch or curl yourself in. Find your way to a sideline shape. Taking just a few rounds of breath there before coming back upright again. And as you arrive in that upright space, feel again the body connected to the earth, the stillness that it lends you, and the open space all around you, and how that allows you to kind of open yourself up. Take a couple of breaths in through the crown, down to the root, and then out from the root back up through the crown. Just take a few breaths like that. And turning the palms up and just kind of lifting them up about heart height or so. And just imagine you can kind of feel some energy or weight in each hand. Feel in one hand your individual self, feel in the other hand the wholeness of everything that is. Feel in one hand the parts of you that you know well, and in the other hand those more hidden and shadow side parts of yourself. Feel in the one hand your body, feel in the other hand your soul, your mind, the other parts of you. And that active symbolism, drawing those palms to press together and unify into one thing. Pull those into your heart center and just let that oneness kind of pervade your body, pervade your mind, pervade the space that you're in. Just feel the oneness of everything everywhere. As we endeavor to do this extremely challenging work and sometimes unpleasant work of working with those shadow parts of us, those unacknowledged voices within. We do this to bring ourselves into peace, to release resistance against oneness inside of ourselves, and so that we might invite that oneness from ourselves out into the world, that we all might reduce our own suffering and the suffering of all other beings. And so we close with this prayer. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings be happy, healthy, safe, and free. Namaste.